What's up, music fans? Welcome to another episode of the Vault Podcast. Today we're going to be covering classic rock. It's part of our genre talk series, which we just go in depth into genres. Classic rock, technically it's not a genre, and it's hard to define classic. But before we do that, Brent's with us again today. Brent, how's it going?
Not too bad, man. You?
Doing pretty good. One thing I wanted to get your take on is some music headlines. You had no idea I was going to throw that at you either.
Oh, sweet. Let's do it.
All right, so this is going to something we're going to do every now and then, and it's kind of two things. One, we want to bring you some valid information, some newer bands, some activities that some of the newer or older bands are doing, and then we also want to give you some just general funny headlines and some sad headlines. And when I mean sad, I mean like these are news stories that I found like at the top of like Billboard or MTV or something like that. So it just tells you what a sad state the music is. So I'll read a story to you and you can kind of give your opinion. So we'll start with this. Metallica, I guess, played a concert for the Salesforce.com San Francisco corporate. What do you think of that? Metallica playing for a corporate concert.
Metallica playing a corporate concert?
Yeah, is that not like blasphemous or what?
Well, honestly, I'm not really surprised at Metallica doing it. I mean, yeah, you would like to think, you get your thrash metal, what are they doing playing at a corporate concert and this and that, but like if you think or take on the whole Napster issue and everything that arose there, especially with them, I mean, their reputations were pretty much shredded there with Napster. So, I mean, I'm really kind of not surprised. What corporation, what were they playing for?
It just, the headline, let's see, it just says it's hosted by Salesforce.com, which is, I guess, something to do with cloud computing.
Wow, I don't really know what to say. It's weird.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's just odd. I mean, I don't know that they've ever been a total DIY kind of band. And like you said, after the Napster thing, it all just kind of went downhill from there. But, they had been doing some stuff where they, did their shows where they had Merciful Fate, and then they brought up Danzig, and they even brought Dave Mustaine back to play some songs. So they were it was almost like they were kind of making back up with the fans, and then all of a sudden they play this corporate concert. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, I'm sure they got a good payday out of it, so you got to do it. But it's just kind of odd.
Knowing some of the history and stuff with Metallica, I mean, they're very kind of pro-profit and every artist profits and stuff like that. So I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they would be the one heavy metal band that would be doing that. Now, if you said Slayer was doing it, I would probably fall down. But
at this point, I wouldn't surprise if that happened to them some point either. I mean, it's just getting so hard for some bands to just keep playing that nothing's going to surprise me, I guess.
Yeah, even though, have you heard the new Metallica? They came out, was it last year, with a rough cut or something of one of a newer song they were recording?
No, I haven't.
I don't remember the name of it. It's actually not bad.
Oh, I didn't think their last album was too bad, actually.
No, I actually really enjoyed it, and even Sane Anger album actually isn't awful other than the snare sound. I mean, the album's actually not bad. So
yeah. All right, moving on. Let's see. Man listening to only Nickelback for a week to help charity.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we don't even need to read into that. I just thought I'd throw that out there. This is pretty cool, and I know you might not know as much about these bands, but I just think it's a cool thing to see. Members of Exhumed, Possessed, and Malevolent Creation form a new band called Gruesome. So you got members from these legendary death metal bands all coming together. So it's always good to see something like that.
Yeah, that's always nice. Now, on the whole Nickelback thing, are you sure this wasn't our government torturing people and they just said it was for charity?
No, it's what it said.
I mean, come on. Is there any charity that, in need of help that...
On the record with this podcast, I will rather listen to Nickelback for a week than hear more Bro Country.
Oh, man.
It's not even close for me, really. That's how much I hate that Bro Country.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I actually heard one of the songs you talked about on the, whenever we talked about them on one of the previous podcasts the other day again, and yeah. It completely kind of solidified what you were saying in my head again fully, because I'd become a little desensitized to it, and then I heard that, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, and if you're out there, if you're a aspiring artist, or if you're Blake Shelton or whoever, if for whatever reason you were to hear this, please come on the show. Like, I want to know what your thought process is. Like, are you truly an artist? You just taking the payday? You know, do you believe actually in what you're singing about? Because I just don't get any of that. So.
Oh no, absolutely. We will give you however long you want on a podcast to come on and explain the entire thing.
All right,
I would absolutely love it.
Moving on to even more awesome news, and this is a headline. Keep in mind, we're talking music news. Katy Perry, not 2 months pregnant. That's the state music's in.
Well, you know, at least we're worried about that instead of the music, I guess.
All right, next up, Vanilla Ice arrested for burglary. Did you hear about that?
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Didn't he film in the reality show or something too, though? Or
yeah, I guess some of the stuff that was taken from the house or whatever was one that they were actually renovating for the upcoming show. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Next up, Coal Chamber actually has a new album coming out, and
really, Coal Chamber.
Yeah, they've posted. They got back together, and they've posted the first part of a webinar where they're just kind of explaining some of the new stuff. It's going to be called Rivals, and I think it's going to be like 13 or 14 tracks. But I actually heard a little clip from it, and it's actually pretty good. I mean, it's something that I'll actually consider buying, and that's something for me to say coming for a band trying to make a comeback out of that new metal scene, and if they sound halfway decent, that's saying something.
Yeah, I always enjoyed Coal Chamber.
Yeah, they were one of my favorite bands out of that stuff.
Yeah, I loved their Dark Days album. Honestly, I really enjoyed that as one of my favorite ones of theirs. And then, Devil Driver's always been kind of cool with Dez, so it's actually kind of neat. I hope it sounds pretty cool. So. All
right, next up, Nicki Minaj tour manager stabbed to death.
Oh wow, I hadn't even heard that.
Yeah, so that I mean that's not good. We're not making fun of that at all, but it's just this is a headline on music news. So when you have an artist like her at the top of music news, again, sad state of music. And finally, a story from Five Finger Death Punch. I guess one of their guitarists used to do some studio work, which is awesome. Like, studio musicians are great. They most of the time, from what I've heard, they don't have to travel or anything. They just sit down and record. Yeah. And he's worked with Alice Cooper and Vince Neil. It's Vince Neil's solo project for Motley Crue. But apparently he's also worked with Mandy Moore and Hilary Duff.
Well, I guess whatever it takes to get paid.
Yeah, I just thought that was pretty interesting. That sometimes there's going to be artists who are like, oh, I'm true till death metal, or I'm hardcore rap. I'm not gonna mess around with these other genres and something. And like, here's a guy who's just like, I'm gonna look out for myself to make some money and play some music. So. Well,
I mean, wasn't what was his name? Was like John 5 or whatever with Manson? Didn't he play with Katie Lang there for a while too? Like way back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I know Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme plays with Rihanna.
Yeah.
And he's almost like in the virtuoso guitar player range, So I don't know. I always just think that's kind of cool to see. And I don't even like Five Finger Death Punch, but to see a metal guy playing with some pop artists, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like a couple of their tunes. I'm not like a huge fan. I really like their. With the exception of some of the lyrics change, I actually really like their House of the Rising Sun redo. But
the video's cool.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that. But no, like you said, it's neat to see some range and them kind of stepping out of a comfort zone. I mean, yeah, they'll get made fun of it, but hell, he's not gonna care.
No, yeah. All right, so moving on to the main topic of today's show, classic rock, and this is a really wide range of music to cover. We kind of put the cut line at 1985, and we're going back from there. And, don't jump all over us. We know we're going to miss some artists. We know that somebody's going to say, oh, why didn't you put this in? Or you can't put this in because it's pre-60s or pre-70s, whatever. We don't care. We're just putting it all together. And really, I mean, it's the golden age of rock and roll. Between, I would say like maybe from the 50s to our cutoff, that's where all the good stuff came from. you had the very experimental stuff with all different kinds of bands. Do you have anything just to add real quick, right off the top of your head, for summing up classic rock?
Oh no, it's just whenever you think of some of the greatest, like, guitar players, drummers, and everything, they all come from this time. Even a lot of your vocalists and everything, you had fantastic songwriting, you had good lyrics. I mean, you had everything. So I mean, it was a really good time in music, honestly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the bands, you always get the cliche rock star, cliche big arena concert. That's what these classic rock bands were. Because I mean, if you look back at a lot of these bands and old clips and stuff, they had to play small venues and stuff coming up. But when you see these clips, all they're playing is stadiums, big arenas, stuff like that, as opposed to even the hair bands. And then going into the 90s and modern bands, now you see a lot of videos from small clubs or people's basements or whatever. Again, we know that these bands played some shows like that, but it's just they lived and were, I guess, the cliche rock and roll thing. They just hit it dead on. So, and one other thing is they were like the originals of a lot of the styles of music. Almost everything you hear now is a retread, and that's to be expected. But there's so many bands, and the best example I can use is Sabbath clones. There's a huge resurgence now of that kind of bluesy, slow, riff-driven metal. And a lot of people don't like it because they say, oh, it sounds like Black Sabbath. But we've said in previous episodes, I'd rather hear 50 bands sounding like Black Sabbath or 100 bands sounding like Led Zeppelin than, again, hearing another Katy Perry song or worse yet, that bro country. So let's get into talking about some of these bands. There's so many different styles, from psychedelic bands, just straight up hard rock bands. You've got the kind of origins of metal with Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and even Led Zeppelin being kind of a little bit of everything. It's all just different kinds of styles, so I mean, you can't particularly pigeonhole these bands. That's why we just call it all classic rock. And Brent, I don't know about you, but one thing that's kind of odd for me is it makes you feel old. You start hearing a lot of these bands that were really popular in the 90s showing up on classic rock stations.
Yeah, it's actually sad. I'm starting to understand, the whole nostalgia my parents felt when like the oldie station came on.
And it's weird because when you hear Stone Temple Pilots, you don't think, oh, this is classic rock. I was thinking more like, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Right, yeah. I can't see Stone Temple Pilots as classic rock or even a lot of the bands I grew up listening to anymore.
Yeah, even though it is classic, it's like it's not,
Well, right. Well, and it's not classic to us because classic to us was stuff, that was 20 years older than we were.
Right. Yeah. And it just seems like that like I said, the classic rock from '85 back, we'll say, it's just the creativity of the bands was just, it seems like it was so much greater, and they put so much more passion into it as opposed to anything after that.
Well, yeah, and like I said earlier, I mean, you had great songwriting, you had great musicianship, you had, great vocalists, you had everything. Whenever you look at, you see your top 10 lists online and everything of greatest drummer, greatest guitar player, almost every time it will be people from this, era.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, it's just, and like you said, you have so many different styles. You have your origins of, like, the psychedelic stuff really starting to come out. You have your just really weird stuff like Pink Floyd that, it's kind of hard to put any type of label on. And, you don't really have that nowadays. I mean, you do, but it's also kind of underground.
Right.
You almost have to go really, really dig and search for it now, where back then it was just seemed to be everywhere. So.
Yeah, and it was like an acceptable thing. You would see these bands like on these major, like I said, big stadium shows where now, I don't, unless you're a pop or a rap artist, I don't think you get any kind of shows like that.
No. Anymore, it seems like a lot of bands have kind of gone back to the little more intimate thing anyway.
Which I'm a fan of. I like those so much better than the big stadium shows.
Yeah, I do too. Because you see even, some of your bands break off from, your big like festival tours and stuff like that. And some of the bands will actually play your more local, smaller venues.
Yeah, doing like the one-off shows.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, like, the one that really shocked me was whenever, like, 1349 broke off from whatever, was, like, playing, like, some downtown Arkansas town.
Yeah, I know. Last year, St. Vitus played in Arkansas, too, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people don't know who the crap 1349 is, but, I mean, they have a fairly big following, but I mean, they had to have had something to have played in, like, middle of nowhere Arkansas.
I'll tell you who
So,
1349 is. It's a band that everybody needs to go check out. That's who they are.
definitely, man. Definitely.
All right. So one thing, speaking of touring, one thing that I was thinking of while you were saying that was, it seems like when you look at some of these artists and these tour dates, like the big Monsters of Rock festival or like Woodstock, there's so many diverse types of bands playing together on these venues that it almost forced people to have an open mind towards music as far as genres go. So you'd have the hippie flower child next to the biker, or next to the hard rock stoner. You just have them all together, and they all accepted the music as one, and it was just awesome. Whereas today, you get these package tours where you get all death metal bands or all hip hop or all whatever. That's one thing. Say what you will about Insane Clown Posse, but the Gathering of the Juggalos every year, that's one thing I like about them is they bring their stuff, they bring in some other rap artists, they bring in rock, Cannibal Corpse played that last year, and I mean they don't fit the bill at all, and then they'll also throw like comedians and pro wrestling in with it, so you literally get everything, and that's one thing that I miss just about classic rock is it was just the total package. Didn't matter what style you are, if people were digging you, you're playing the show. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I know like some of the concerts we go to, you're at the venue and they keep playing the same type of music. Like was it the Spirit Caravan show we were at? Like between bands, they played nothing but Sabbath.
Yeah, and it was like the same 3 Sabbath songs everyone knows.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, that's great. You could mix it up a little.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so, like you were saying, you get a lot of that stuff going on. But I remember you said, wasn't you the one telling me we went to a Down concert? They like showed a video of Robin Trower.
Yeah, their opening band, because they played like a 2.5-hour set or something like that. Their opening bands was live concert footage on a giant big screen that was right in the middle of the stage, and it was Robin Trower, Kiss, Thin Lizzy, Ted Nugent, and there's someone else, and I just can't think of it. But yeah, that was just like I would rather see that on a big screen opening for Down than I would like some local whatever band,
Yep.
And that just goes back to what we were talking about on classic rock about how much of a staple it is and how much of the sounds, they just resonate with us. Because if we would rather see, Robin Trower playing on a big screen for an opening band for Down than we would an actual live band, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, it also speaks to Robin Trower's, though.
That's true.
I mean, that whole thing's just amazing. So whenever you have Opeth covering some of your songs, I mean, that's neat to me. So
let's get into some of these bands. We can't cover them all. There's too many. We're working with like multiple decades here, so there's too much to go back on. But we're going to be listing the most influential bands. If some reason you're living under a rock, even if you're like 15 years old listening to this and you don't know some of these bands we talked about, that's what we're here for. We're going to be telling you some of the most relevant bands. It might not be our favorite bands, but it's the key bands in these genres that people need to go listen to. And even if there's bands that maybe we don't like necessarily, most of them you can find at least one song that's just totally killer. So we're going to just go back and forth. We've got a list here. Some honorable mentions I had was ZZ Top, Pink Floyd, The Doors, Allman Brothers, Rolling Stones, and The Who. Brent, you want to go with your honorable mention?
I've got a couple the same ones you have in The Who and ZZ Top, but I also added Cream and CCR.
Yeah, I should have added CCR on there. I don't know how I forgot that, and like I said at the start of the show, I can probably think of bands right now we're gonna keep forgetting. So
one thing that shocked me when I was doing like the research for all this stuff that I didn't know, Cream, I guess the website I was on said they've sold like 35 million albums, and they were together for 3 years.
Yeah, does that not speak classic rock to you and how important it is?
Yeah, I mean that's literally unreal to me. So I mean, just like I said, that's just an honorable mention for us. So
bands starting now aren't going to sell that in a lifetime.
Right.
All right, so I'll start with my number 5, and we're going to go with Aerosmith. And I'm not the biggest Aerosmith fan in the world, but to me, they represent classic rock. They represent what it is. They have the look. They've got the hard rock edge. They had the ballads. Steven Tyler's notorious on-stage dancing and the streamers and bandanas and all that stuff. So I think it was like a precursor to some of the hair bands coming in, because they started doing a lot of the same stuff. And maybe even into the emo bands. I mean, I know, they try to look like chicks with tight pants and stuff, and I don't think Aerosmith were trying to look like girls, but, you might be able to see a similar thing there. But, they've got several good songs, and they weren't afraid to step out of the box, too. They did this stuff with Run DMC, and that was kind of the first rap and rock thing that would, hit 10, 15 years later. But what do you got to add on Aerosmith?
I've never been a huge Aerosmith fan, but the songs I like they're just good songs. I mean, a lot of their music's just really good. It was just never really the style I was ever really in love with. But yeah, I mean, they are just a truly classic band. Everybody knows Steven Tyler. You may not know another person in the band, but there will at least be one or two songs of Aerosmith that you know and love.
Right, and I totally agree with you. It's not my favorite band, but there's the songs I like. I really do like. So
yeah.
Go ahead with the first one on your list.
I'm gonna have to go with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Get a little southern rock in there. There again, Skynyrd. I have a true love-hate relationship with Lynyrd Skynyrd. I like a couple of their songs, and I pretty much hate everything else everybody plays. It's undeniable the influence they actually have and still have. I mean, what was it, 2 or 3 of the guys died in the plane crash, and everybody was injured, and they were broke up they didn't do anything for 10 years or something.
Something like that.
Then they rejoin, and they're still a huge act. And, there again, you have Kid Rock, kind of ripping off some of their stuff. I say ripping off, he wasn't. He was just using kind of some samples and stuff of their music. And, I mean, when you think southern rock in my head, I always think Lynyrd Skynyrd. Lynyrd Skynyrd,
yep. That's Lynyrd Skynyrd and Molly Hatchet. That's the two southern rock bands I always think of. And just to add on that, they've got some really awesome songs that are kind of popular, but nobody talks about a lot. One of my favorite songs from is "Give Me Back My Bullets." I mean, that song. Yeah, that song it doesn't sound like "Sweet Home Alabama" or "Tuesday's Gone" or "Freebird," which is horrible song, honestly. Maybe you know what? Maybe it's not so horrible. It's just I'm so tired of hearing it, and I'm so tired of the cliche drunk Freebird guy at concerts that I don't want anything to do with it anymore. So, anything else on Skynyrd?
No, it's just like what you said though. Everybody, I'm like you. Every time I hear Freebird, I think of the big fat drunk guy at wherever I happen to be at playing it. And the song's actually not that bad. Whenever I can manage to go a couple weeks without hearing it, it's not too bad. It's just, I would rather hear their other stuff that doesn't usually get played.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next on my list is AC/DC. Who doesn't know AC/DC? Love them, hate them, whatever. They're the most basic rock band you could put together. They play the same notes and chords all the time. Nothing ever changes. Yep. They haven't changed their sound in however many years. You do have the differences in the singers, and I actually like both. It's almost like two different bands that are the same band, which is kind of odd, but they both bring totally different dynamics. Bon Scott, I thought, brought more of a kind of edgy rock and roll, and with Brian Johnson, I think it's got more of this heavy, blues attitude kind of to it, if that makes any sense. They have a lot of good songs too that again nobody really knows, and maybe that's because it doesn't get played, or maybe because that's all they sound the same. But what do you got to say on AC/DC?
True to how they started, they have, like you said, they have never changed. Their music, to me, most of the songs all sound the same at some point or another, but a lot of bands will mess around with other genres. They'll do weird things here and there. AC/DC has never deviated from that first formula they had. I mean, I love them. They're a great band. It's unfortunate that one guy tried to hire somebody to murder somebody, I guess. But
their drummer,
yeah. But it's just like I said, they have been the same band since they started. So that says a lot.
One thing I'll throw in there too. Go watch. This is just kind of a funny note. Go watch a live AC/DC performance. Brian Johnson's always talking to the crowd. You can't ever understand a word he's saying. And after you watch that, go watch the Jim Brewer stand-up part about AC/DC. It's the funniest thing in the world. So, what's next on your list?
I'm gonna have to go with Queen, and everybody knows Queen. I mean, it's just they're one of the most popular bands in the history of the world. You've got the completely out there, flamboyant, front man with Freddie Mercury, and I mean, just talented beyond belief. And you have in my opinion, one of the greatest guitar players of all time, with like Brian May. Like I said, everybody knows one of their songs. I'm not a big "We Will Rock You" fan, just because, let's face it, you hear it at like every single ball game from junior high up.
Yeah.
At some point. But that speaks to their influence as well. While I may not like that song, everybody knows it, and it's still there. And something that really shocked me: their albums have spent like over 26 years on the UK album charts.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I saw that, I was like, holy crap. I mean, that's something I never would have known until I was researching this. And their greatest hits in the UK, their greatest hits album, has actually outsold the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album by over 600,000 copies.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, I am not a Beatles fan. I'll just say that right now. I'll take whatever cussing comes with it, but I am not a Beatles fan at all.
Hey, since we're talking about the Beatles, I'll just give you my 2 cents. I think they have a couple, when I say a couple, probably 10 to 15 really, really good songs, and I love the Yellow Submarine soundtrack because it's so out there. But right. I also have to say they're one of the most overrated bands ever, period. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, give me Eleanor Rigby and the whole I Am the Walrus, and I'm pretty much done after that. I mean, they have a few others that are pretty good, but aside from those two, I'm hard-pressed to care.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, Queen goes and stuff, I mean, you look, all of their stuff is different, and it's out there, and I don't know. I absolutely love them. I always have, so...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about Queen, is that they were going in all different directions as far as elements of music, testing out different genres, trying different sounds, doing all that kind of stuff. And that's one thing we love at this website is bands that are trying to be open-minded about producing music and having different sounds. And there are bands out there, like one that I can think of right off that I really like that, they're it seems like they're popular, but you don't ever hear anybody talk, like you see people talking about them online, but when I talk to people about music, nobody ever brings them up, and that's Mars Volta. They just use so many different styles, a lot of different world styles of music, and put it all together. And I just don't think that's what people are looking for nowadays in the masses. They want something that's easy, digestible to listen to. They don't want something that's kind of organic, and you have to kind of, I don't know. I'm doing like a flower child head bobbing thing right now, trying to, like nobody wants to do that stuff when they listen to music. They just want to like stare blankly at something while they listen to it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh no, I completely understand. I mean, it's kind of one of those music, almost pop music anymore is almost to the point it's just background noise for whatever it is they're doing. It's just another layer of distraction.
And I think that's what people want. I think
it is, and I don't know. Pop music to me anymore. Of course, we talked about this over and over. Like I said, it's just another layer of distraction. And something like Queen, you can get lost in their albums. I mean, literally, if you're not paying attention, you may not even realize you're listening to the same band.
Yeah, them and Pink Floyd. That's too.
Oh yeah, Pink Floyd's way out there.
And we'll talk about that. I could sit there, and I do this to this day sometimes. It started when I was in junior high, but there'd be times where I'd go to bed at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I'd just throw on headphones, and I would listen to albums for 4 or 5 hours straight. And I still do that sometimes. And it's right, you do get lost in it because you're actually like sinking in the music and listening to it, as opposed to what we said. They just want background noise. Throw on a pair of Dre beats and plug it into an iPod. It doesn't matter what's on the iPod or if it's even playing. It's almost like it's an accessory now just to look like you're listening to music, but it's just, again, if you are listening to something, it's probably background noise. So
right.
Moving on to my next band is Kiss, and everybody knows Kiss. One big thing, if you don't know Kiss, is they don't sound like they look. Everybody thinks that they're this ferocious metal, baby-killing band, breathing fire, drinking blood, whatever. It's all a stage show, and I actually think their music is better than their look.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have like King Diamond and Corpse Paint from black metal bands and stuff like that, but their sound, their original sound is great, and actually this may be unpopular too, but my favorite album from them is Dynasty, when they basically went all disco. I absolutely love it, and I loved when they didn't have the paint on in the 80s. I mean, that's we're kind of getting out of the classic rock with their 80s stuff, but legendary stage shows, one of the biggest marketing bands, that you could get Kiss dolls. You still can. You can get Kiss anything. Kiss coffins, whatever. So what do you got to say about Kiss?
Honestly, I have grown to have a greater appreciation of Kiss over the past few years.
Oh, cool.
I absolutely detest almost every single popular song they play on the radio of theirs.
Agreed.
But whenever you actually get into a lot of the other music, it's actually really well done. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it was the album they had with Vinnie Vincent.
The first one was Lick It Up, I believe.
There was another one in there. I don't know that it was that one.
There was another one after, or one or two after that, yeah.
But there was one that, I guess wasn't very popular or whatever, and it was actually one I really enjoyed. I wish I could remember the name of it. That shows you how much I've really gotten into Kiss. But, no, I mean, we've got a mutual friend that absolutely loves Kiss, and, he's like, well, here, you need to listen to this. Don't listen to all the stuff on the radio. Listen to this stuff. And it's like, wow, I never would have imagined that was Kiss.
Exactly.
And like I said, I will not claim to be the biggest Kiss fan in the world, but I have grown in appreciation by leaps and bounds from where I was even just 8 or 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, and I still catch a lot of flack for liking, like I said, the Dynasty album. I mean, it's so catchy, but it's so good. Yeah, it might not be, rocking guitar solos every other song or whatever, but I don't care. It sounds awesome. There's good disco tunes out there, guys. Don't just put the genre aside because it says disco and whatever. So.
Well, no, honestly, I think that speaks well of Kiss. Honestly, that they were willing to do that.
There were several bands that were, I can't think of some right offhand, but I was reading an article once about that, and they're like, yeah, Kiss did this, but so did all these other bands. So yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what. Again, we pride ourselves in liking these different styles of music, and any artist that's willing to step out of the comfort zone, even for a second, totally off topic, but even like the Chris Gaines thing with Garth Brooks, I mean, at least he tried something.
Right.
Go ahead with the next on your list, unless you got something else to add on that.
No, that's all I've got with that. The next on my list is Rush. And Rush is a band all through high school, I had a severe love-hate relationship with them. I would hear a couple songs, and then I would get told that was Rush, and I'm like, okay, I really like that. And then I would hear, Tom Sawyer and some of the more popular ones on there, and I'm like, oh, God, I hate this band. I actually got into some of the lyrics and everything with Rush, and I started kind of gathering a really big appreciation. I can't remember which one it is. One of them has similar philosophical interests that I had in college. And I started examining Rush's albums completely different. And I ended up developing a really strong appreciation for the band, and now they're one of my favorite bands, honestly.
That's why you don't write off bands after listening to them a first couple times. You need to get time to digest these things before you just discard a band. So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. But, I mean, they've got 30 albums in over 30 years, and they've sold over 40 million copies. I mean, that's amazing. And the fact that how many times were they passed over from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
And if you guys have not seen the acceptance speech into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's worth checking out. It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing I like about the band is they have a little bit of a sense of humor, and they know who they are, and they do like to progress, but not... They do use different styles and they go in different directions, but it's not drastic, like some bands, which would maybe turn fans off. If you're a Rush fan, you're pretty much a Rush fan for life, most people, because you just stick with them because their sound is so consistent, but they do update,
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we talked earlier on another podcast about how a couple of their albums have 20 minutes of kind of nothing. like the 2112 especially. Which, I mean, it's a great tune, but I mean, it could be cut in half in all honesty, and most people would never notice.
No, but I'll still take that nothingness over songs about pickup trucks.
Well, exactly.
Just saying, I've got to get my jabs in there every time I can.
I understand. And one thing that's really impressed me with Rush, they changed one band member early on, and it was the drummer, and they ended up with Neil Peart. And I don't want to get into a who's the greatest drummer of all times argument right now, but Neil Peart does some of the, speaking as a drummer, he does some of the neatest, just kind of cymbal work and stuff like that I've heard even until today. I mean, it's all unique. You listen, he rarely ever plays the same thing twice. Even, whenever the chorus repeats and stuff, he's always doing something just a little bit different. And if you've ever watched him play, it almost makes you sick because he looks bored.
Yeah, definitely.
He's just that focused. I mean, he's that good. And that's one thing that really, like I said, after I picked up on the philosophical stuff behind a lot of their music, and especially the 2112 album, I started actually digging into the music, and they're all very talented. I mean, some people are put off by Geddy Lee's vocals, which are very high-pitched, and they can grate a little bit, but it was kind of like black metal for me. It was like once I kind of started getting used to it, I couldn't imagine it any other way.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, that's about all I've got. I just, like you said, Rush is kind of one of those bands that tends to split people, and their fans are kind of diehard. And
yeah,
I've become a pretty, big fan of theirs now. So.
Yeah, one thing I'll add too about Neil Peart is you were talking about his setup, and he's got one of the biggest drum sets that you're going to see. But unlike many of these artists who have these giant setups, but they play like two pieces of it, he plays all of it. Like every bit of that, he's going to use at least once. So that's just something else that I wanted to point out that's awesome. So.
There's drum solos on YouTube. Sorry, man, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Solos on YouTube that are just him at like the concerts and stuff. I mean, even here not so long ago. And I mean, it's just unreal how many different styles of music he switches into in the course of a drum solo. Like I said, the more I got to listening to him, just the more and more impressed I get.
Okay, we'll move on to our last two here, and we both have the same artists, so we're gonna. This should drive home the point on these two artists. First one we've got is Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was kind of the bridge between the heavier stuff and the softer stuff. You've got like, Stairway to Heaven, and then you got like Black Dog, and that's just how that just sums up the band. I cannot remember the name of the song, but it's like pretty much all mandolin, and I've got to have to find the name of it. But that's probably my favorite song ever from them, just because it's so unique. And Robert Plant's vocals, they fit very well with almost every song. Everybody's, I'm not a big Jimmy Page fan, not because I don't think he's good or anything. It's just there's some people that treat him like a guitar god, and I'm like, well, I mean, I know he's good and I know he's versatile with instruments, but I don't think he's that good. But the riffs are memorable. All Led Zeppelin stuff is good for the most part, so... I think they would bridge the gap between a lot of fans too. As I said, they do the heavier stuff and the softer stuff. So you get the girls at the show, but you get the guys too. Unlike later on at like some of the heavier shows or Rush shows, it's like all a bunch of nerdy dudes. So yeah. So what do you got to add on Led Zeppelin?
They put out an album that literally had no name. It had runes. That, to me, sums up Led Zeppelin. I mean, if I was just point at one thing, it's an album with runes as a title. Like you said, Robert Plant's vocals, I used to hate them. There again, they grew on me as I got more mature in my musical taste and everything. And, Jimmy Page, his stuff's, it's memorable. I'm like you. I don't see him as like a top 5 all-time guitar player. But, the guy's, so much better than I could ever possibly even hope to be. I'm not going to take that away from him. But like you said, they're a good bridge band between a lot of that stuff, and they were not afraid to do anything they wanted with music. Like you said, your favorite was the mandolin. Yeah, I'm a big fan of some of their more popular stuff, honestly. But yeah, I mean, just they did everything and anything they wanted to, and that is just amazing to me.
That's a band that even their popular stuff I actually like. You know, most of the time you don't like whatever the popular stuff is, but their stuff is so good and consistent that I'll even listen to some of the real popular stuff. And Stairway to Heaven, I really don't like that song, but if it's on, you know, I'm not gonna change it or anything.
Well, see, I saw something online that I guess that song was never released as a single, but has been played, they estimate, probably more than any other song in history.
And see, that's another thing that's awesome about classic rock is it was album oriented. When you listen to it, you throw that record on and you just let it ride. You don't go on iTunes and buy the top single for 99 cents and say, "Oh, I love this band." And I mean, you could not get more of a better example right there. One thing I'll add too, since we're talking about Led Zeppelin, and I did a review on this recently. And Brent, I don't know if you've either read it or heard the album, but did you ever hear the album with Robert Plant and Alison Krauss?
No. It sounds awesome, though.
It is, okay, so I bought it, I saw it, and I'm like, wow, is this going to be like, Led Zeppelin with a female singer? Is this going to be a lot of, I know Led Zeppelin used mandolin. Is this going to be like some bluegrass stuff? It's neither. The album is nothing like I've ever heard before. It's probably one of my, if you were to tell me, like, what's some awesome sleeper albums of any decade, that would definitely be one of them. There's so many different styles of music that you can't even put into a box of what style it is, and their vocals go very, very well together. I heard they were trying to make another album, and then something happened, and that's going to fall through, so we're only stuck with one album, but guys, go out there and get that one. I can't remember the name of it, but just look up Robert Plant on our website, and I did the review on the album, and it's great, so...
that sounds awesome.
Moving on to the next. Yeah, definitely. Everybody needs to check it out if you haven't. So, next band, Ultimate Band, number one for both of us, and it's probably the most influential band on our list in so many different ways, is Black Sabbath. And they're pretty much, I'm almost like speechless trying to explain them. They're, if it wasn't for them, we would not have metal at all. We wouldn't have, they influenced with the darker stuff. The low riffs, that's black metal, that's doom, that's death metal. Yep. With the vocals the way they are, we wouldn't have modern rock vocals. We wouldn't have had a lot of these classic rock vocals. We wouldn't have had Ozzy as a solo artist even, with some of the high pitched stuff. So, and they have probably one of the best rhythm sections ever of any band. Period. It was just driving bass and drums. You can't get any better than that. And all their albums are consistent. I'm a huge Sabbath fan, even without Ozzy. If the band did change, their sound changes a little bit. And one of my favorite Black Sabbath albums is Born Again with Ian Gillan, which from Deep Purple, which I had said in a previous podcast. But I was actually listening to that album again the other day, and the vocal, it's almost like the guitars got heavier, the music got even slower, and the vocals got even crazier, as hard as that is. But yeah, what do you got to add on Black Sabbath? I know it's tough, but we got to say something, right?
Right. It is. It's hard to say anything. I mean, they are, yeah. I think back to, whenever we saw them there at Ozfest. And up until that point, I mean, yeah, I'd appreciated, Black Sabbath and who they were and this and that, but I was more into the nu metal and all that, which... they influenced. We wouldn't have had that without Black Sabbath. But I wasn't a big fan until I saw them live, and I finally began to actually appreciate what they were doing. And now that I'm really starting to get into some of the slower, heavier stuff, I keep going back to Black Sabbath again and again. And I'm kind of like you. Some of their stuff with Ozzy, it got kind of played out a little bit, and some of their other stuff with the different people just, I don't know, has a whole lot more weight to it.
And that's one awesome thing, too. You're like, okay, I'm going to listen to Black Sabbath today. Do I want to listen to Ozzy? Do I want to listen to Dio? Do I want to listen to Ian Gillan? And then there's 2 or 3 others that you could possibly listen to. And it all sounds, it still had the core riffs, but it's all just differs just a little bit. And one thing I'll also say about Sabbath, they're heavy, they bring the darkness, but they also bring, they had a nice blues element. And then they also would bring the clean vocals. Most people think that Black Sabbath, they're this doomy, kind of evil scream band. I'm saying that's a person's perspective that's never heard the band. Right. And their music is just so it's so all over the place that I'm speechless. It's just you can't. you can't describe it. We'd be here all night stumbling over our words trying to describe Black Sabbath. So the best thing I can tell you to do is just go listen to them. And I can't tell you what album to listen to because, you could start with the first one and the opening riffs to the song Black Sabbath are some of the most memorable things ever. Or you could just skip straight to the stuff without Ozzy and the stuff with Dio. So that's all I got to say about Sabbath because I'm almost speechless just talking about them. What do you got to add?
Everybody knows the song Paranoid, and it's honestly one of my favorite songs ever of all time. I absolutely love that, and I absolutely love Electric Funeral. They've got a few other, they've got so many great songs, and they're not like War Pigs and stuff like that, but an Iron Man, which, nothing against those songs, it's just there's so much better stuff.
If you want a really Spirit Caravan, Planet Caravan by them, which maybe came Spirit Caravan, maybe got their influences from Planet Caravan, the song. But, man, that's such a great song, and it's not heavy at all, and that just, shows the extent of this band.
I had always kind of underappreciated, like you had mentioned the rhythm section, I had always underappreciated them, because they were kind of, whenever I was coming up to music, Ozzy was the big thing. He had left Sabbath, he was doing his own thing, and he kind of overshadowed the rest of the band there for a time, at least to me. I'd rather listen to Ozzy than Black Sabbath at one point. But you start digging into it, and they're not playing just simple stuff. They're playing good, solid music, too. So that was something that always surprised me, because you think of Sabbath, I always thought of, like, the slow kind of sludge, kind of crawling stuff, and there's a lot more to it than that, so...
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, too, is since we're talking about their rhythm section, they've got the best bass sound in the world. Besides maybe Typo Negative with Peter Steele, that's up there. But, the one thing I love about, we'll use Typo Negative and Black Sabbath, is that when on their recordings, and this has nothing to do with analog or digital, that's for another topic for another show, which, actually, we haven't even covered that, but, the tone that they use is deep, and the volume, like, the bass guitar is higher than some of the other instruments. That's one big problem I have with a lot of rock music, and, well, actually any music, is you can't hear the bass. Right. I think, like, Black Sabbath and then bluegrass that maybe has a stand-up bass player. That's maybe the only two bands or types of music I can think of where you can really hear the bass. And that's just, the bass adds so much to music that, so many bands are not giving it fair justice by turning the guitars way up or turning the vocals, whatever. So that's just one last thing I wanted to add on that. So, all right, so with that, we'll close out the show. Next time, well, maybe not next time, but at some point, we'll keep the genre talks going. We obviously have a lot of genres to cover, so check out our Facebook page. We're trying to get as many likes as possible. Check out Twitter. Hit us up. Ask us any questions. And then check out our YouTube page, which is fairly new. We've got all these podcasts on our YouTube page for you to check out. And if you prefer to listen to them on there, then our website. So with that, keep listening to music, keep buying music, and keep rocking. See ya.
Peace.